Sarah Chayer is an accomplished author with a passion for storytelling that spans 2 decades, culminating in the release of her debut novel, Incandescent, Magic Unknown, and her recent work, Moonrise, a collection of original poems and illustrations reflecting on her journey towards improved mental health. And Sarah is with us here. How are you today?
I am good. Thanks for asking.
So, what was your kind of journey as a writer, and what inspired you to start writing?
I mean, it would go back to when I was maybe about 10 years old and I first realized I had any kind of talent, I guess you could say, for
Yeah.
writing. Wrote a short story in a prompt for school, and one of my teachers made it out to be like such a huge deal. And that was kind of the first time I realized that I could be good at anything. I've always had very low self-esteem, so I was like, oh, writing, I could do this. So I started using that as an outlet. To express myself and, dig a little bit deeper in the things that maybe I was too shy to say ever in person.
Yeah.
So it was a way to explore myself and find
Yes.
find myself, really.
Yeah. Your book, Incandescent, Magic Unknown, took you nearly 20 years of writing and rewriting. So what kept you motivated and committed to that project and writing generally, I suppose, for such a long time?
Yeah, so that one I had originally written when I was, I guess, about 10 years old, maybe 12 years old. And it was at first just an excuse to use the computer because I shared a computer with my sister at the time and I didn't like her hogging it, so I needed an excuse to use it. And then I kind of enjoyed it and I was like, okay, well, I don't want to start from scratch. I like these characters. I'll just rewrite it again. And then I rewrote again and I was like, okay, there's still a lot of problems here. I could fix this. I could do better. So I wrote it again. And over the years, I kind of kept coming back to it, tweaking things here and there, and it was just never perfect. There was always something wrong either with the plot or I felt like I wasn't doing enough for the characters, like maybe they were too bland. And so finally, like in recent years, again, like there's like breaks like of maybe years between each of these rewrites. And I kind of had like an epiphany about like one of the characters got inspired by some music from an artist that I really like. And I was like, oh, this is the character. This is my main male lead. Like I got to go in and redo this again. And so kind of with that last piece, I felt like everything fell into place and it was finally ready.
You mentioned about worrying about some of the characters being a bit bland. So how do you approach character development in your books?
So with the Incandescent series, it's always been like very, very important to me that the characters feel like real. And I have a very emotional attachment to each of them because I've known them for 20 years in developing them. And so they are, it sounds daft, but they are actually my friends. Like I know them. And so I have a very strong connection with them. So I try to make sure that, each of them have their own arc in the books, that you can't pull one of them out and the story would still be the same, that they each bring something to it. And so making sure that they're all unique and relatable to the reader.
And that's a good sign that even you believe in the characters because you invented them. It will be very convincing to the reader. And how much of that do you think is sort of crucial to the success of the series?
It's very much a character-driven series. Like there's, it's a urban fantasy series, so it's magic and there's like these big grandiose things going on. But when it comes down to it, it really is about the characters and their journey and their friendship and this kind of found family dynamic and finding friends for life and using that as a support structure during times of grief, times of triumph. So I think it is something that definitely reads through, that pulls through more so than magic. It's in the title, but it's more so about friendship than magic.
Moonrise, your most recent work, features a collection of original poems and illustrations that express your journey to mental health improvement. So what was it that inspired that work?
Sure. So yeah, that one is quite a departure from the previous book. Like it's two very different genres. But I've always been interested in poetry. I've been writing that since I was maybe 15 years old. Just another outlet where instead of creating these big, grandiose fantasy worlds that I can be a little bit more honest about myself. And I was struggling a lot with mental health in the last few years, and it kind of kept declining. Um, and I realized that I had to make some changes because I couldn't continue going on the way I was. So I started, seeing a therapist. I started making decisions to put myself first, actively trying to make my life better. And one of the outlets I used was art therapy, both with painting and with poetry, and decided to take the poetry that I was creating and some of the artwork and put it together into a book to publish. One, to get that out because, I've had a lot of that trapped within myself. So it was good to put it out there for people to read,
Yeah.
to enjoy either on a surface level or if there's other people out there who might be suffering with similar issues, that it might resonate with them and let them know that they're not alone and give them that sense of hope that there's others out there and people who want to help them improve and that there is a chance to improve.
And for the sort of content of the poems, how much of it is based on your own experiences with mental health and how much of it is maybe general stuff or inspired by other things?
Sure. So it's all completely personal. It's kind of telling this big overarching story from when I was at my worst until about last year. So, when it's getting bad, it's getting worse, and then at my lowest point, and then slowly starting to pick myself up again. So it is completely all personal. So it might not resonate with everybody, but I think everyone can take something out of it. I think everyone can identify with at least one part of the journey here or there. And I do a lot of it using metaphors. So even if people aren't looking to identify it, they can still enjoy some of them at a surface level. So like I have a poem about old leftovers in the back of my fridge and opting to leave them there instead of cleaning it, and it's getting gross and worse and disgusting, and eventually I have to clean it so I can use my Tupperware container again. And so that one you can enjoy at the humorous level, but it's also a metaphor about me leaving my issues in the back of my mind and not wanting to deal with them until it gets gross and it's festering, and then it's harder to deal with. So poems can be enjoyed on either level, either surface level or looking deeper.
Yeah. Now, you've got a background in communication and journalism, so do you think that's influenced your writing style and approach to storytelling?
Yeah, so that's something that people are often interested to see, that I enjoy writing fiction so much, but that my degree was for journalism.
Yeah.
And I certainly enjoy every form of writing, which is why I had gravitated towards the journalistic degree as opposed to an English degree. But I do also very much enjoy journalistic writing and the nonfiction style of writing. So I used to do a very similar method in planning out, when I'd be writing an essay, and the way I would make my little breakdown of, I'm going to talk about this and this and this and this and this. I do a very similar thing with any of my fiction work where I'm okay, these are my big plot points. And so now I got to break it down into chapters. So it does a similar planning, writing style, even if the actual outcome is going to be vastly different.
Yeah. Because your background is in journalism, do you think that kind of makes you better at the research element? As a journalist, you want to make sure it's based on facts and real stuff, if you see what I mean.
Sure. That's, actually a good point I hadn't considered before. In the journalistic classes I was taking, that you have to do, a lot of research, and you always have to do at least 3 interviews with people.
Yeah.
And along the way with the characters for Incandescent, I definitely did that a lot. I would actually survey my friends to find out information, how would you react to this, and kind of using that to make sure that the characters were real. So I guess I didn't realize I was doing that, but I was.
Yeah.
So I definitely took some kind of journalistic approach to some of it, and doing a lot of research to make sure other elements, not just the characters, were for things that maybe I wasn't familiar about. I created an entire branch of government in the books.
Wow.
And I don't really know much about government. So I'm I had to do some research to see how they function.
Yeah.
So, yeah, so a lot of research that had to be done.
And you've actually won some awards for your work in fiction, poetry, and English. So, how have these accolades shaped your confidence as a writer?
Yeah, so the first one was actually for a poetry contest back when I was in sixth grade. So I think that'd be, oh gosh, I don't know, 13 years old, 12 years old. And I had written a poem and I was like, okay, this is nice. Like I had a little bit of confidence still in my writing at that time, but that was like the first time that someone else kind of verified it for me, that I felt like, that, okay, for sure, someone of, some kind of status has said, yes, this person can write poetry. So I was
Yeah.
like, yes, okay, cool. It's not just my teachers trying to encourage me. um, so that one was like the first one. And then for middle school graduation over here, they give out like awards for like each of like the subjects. And I had received the one for the English award, and I was by no means a popular person in school. I very much felt like a fly on the wall, just hiding in the background. I didn't like being attention at all. But that I was given that surprised me, because I'm like, you wouldn't have given this to maybe one of the other students who was better liked. But no, it was more about the integrity of it, that this is someone who's actually, good at English and deserves it. So that was probably one of the biggest boosts of confidence. And then in college, I submitted one of my short stories just for fun to this little journal that we produced at my college. And the writing staff had originally rejected the short story, but then it got added in because it won the award for the fiction. So that like completely caught me by surprise, because I was on the editing staff. So like I knew everything that was going along the way except for the winners. So all of a sudden the journal comes out and there's my poem I had won. I was like, oh,
Yeah.
dang. So that was like a big surprise. And, given like the critiques that I'd received from the fiction staff who had originally rejected it, and then seeing that it had gotten picked out and the reasons why it got picked out, it just kind of reinforced a lot of the things that I already thought about my writing. And so that has built up my confidence over the years. As someone who does not have any confidence at all, it's been amazing to kind of get those I can't think of the word, but pretty much people
Yeah.
validation, I guess.
Yeah. Now, in addition to the Incandescent series, you're also working on a second separate series. So, what are you able to tell us about that project, and what sets it apart from the first one?
Originally, I had only intended Incandescent to be a single standalone book, and then I realized that there was more I could do with it, so I opened up the ending to open it up for a trilogy. But the other one I always knew was going to be a series revolving around kind of 4 main characters and then 2 mentors. So it's going to have a lot more characters, so I wanted to break it up into series to each book, kind of giving the perspective of each of those characters along the journey. It's also going to be an urban fantasy one, looking at 2 parallel universes, one in a world with magic and one that's just our day and age, and then these 4 characters kind of bridging the gap between the 2. And it had originally started as a comic book I had been doodling when I was younger, and I realized that that was not the medium for me. So I thought, all right, well, I know I like writing, as opposed to trying to draw it out in the panels where it felt kind of flat, where I can give it more depth in a novel format.
Well, what else is coming up other than that? Are there any more projects that you're working on?
Yeah, so I try to keep myself focused on only one at a time, which is why I've had a kind of a delay working on the sequel to Incandescent, because I put all my focus into Moonrise for like the past year. So I try not to divert my attention too much, but I am always working on poetry in the background. But my primary focus at this time is going to be that sequel for Incandescent.
Excellent. Well, where are we able to find all your books and poetry and projects everywhere and keep up to date with you?
Sure. So both my books are available on Amazon as well as other outlets. I'm working on getting it into more local bookstores, because I always like pushing to support local businesses. So I've actually got it available coming at one of the shops here in my hometown, which is very exciting. But you can find out more information on my website, sarahchayer.com. You can follow me on any of my social medias. The handle is going to typically be author Sarah Chayer, so you could follow Instagram and YouTube are my two biggest channels. And I do put out videos on my YouTube with information along my journey about me as a writer, about my publication process. So it's a good fun time.
Yes, excellent. Well, many thanks for talking to us today. It's been great having you here.
Thanks for having me.